Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We're webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. And from time to time, I like to give you a little tip about how to teach something. And I mentioned at the top of the show that I am not an ABA expert. I am not a BCBA. I'm not a behavior expert. I'm not a behavior expert. I'm not a behavior expert. Let's say it 1,000 times because I want you to know that I'm never pretending to be a behavior expert. But I'm a mom with a child who's 8.5 that at 2.5 was diagnosed with autism, and I had no compliance with my child, and my child basically had no means of communication. He had been speaking in full sentences, by the way, and he regressed to the point where there were like maybe 5 words that he would utter occasionally that weren't really well understood, but that I could recognize them from what he had said when he still had language, but he didn't use them functionally. It's not like, you know, he was saying Baba for a bottle. He wasn't having a bottle at that point, but you know what I'm saying? He wasn't saying drink and pointing to a drink. So he wasn't using them to communicate. And I didn't know where we were going to end up. I worried, and there were so many different pieces to the puzzle that I really didn't know that we were ever going to get to a point where my child was going to be able to put a full sentence together, that he was going to be able to speak to me and tell me what his thoughts were and what his feelings were and express empathy for somebody else and talk about his hopes and his dreams and what he wanted to do and what's important to him and how he feels about things that are happening in the world and the change that he wants to be in the world. I had that grief of, oh my gosh, that's all at jeopardy, and I don't know if we're ever going to get there. And I know you guys can relate, that's, you know, what happens to a lot of us in that diagnosis phase. But as I said before, we were able to start really quality ABA therapy at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. He started about a week and a half after his 3rd birthday. And so I was on a wait list for a little while, and I can appreciate when you guys talk about wait lists, hard time. And I didn't have anything else that I could do. I remember trolling the internet and reading anything that I could. Christina Adams wrote a book called A Real Boy. We had her on the show a couple of weeks ago because it was the thing that got me through that period of time, because it was about a boy who was getting therapy at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, and I read that book like it was the Holy Grail. And if that boy was playing with a dollhouse to learn relationships among the family, I went out and bought a dollhouse. I didn't know what to do, right? Because I was having to wait. The great news is you can still get Christina's book because it's awesome. And you can be watching the A Word to see what happens, but you can also start with CARDI learning, and you can start with skills, and you don't have to wait for anybody. Still get on the waiting list if you have that available to you, but you can start with CARDI learning and skills and get that much further along. And I talk to you guys from time to time about skills, and I talk to you about CARDI learning from time to time because I want you to know that it's incredible, that it's absolutely incredible, and that it takes away that, I've got nothing I can do. They talk about how great ABA is, but where is it? There's no therapist at my house. You don't have to be in that mode anymore. You can get right into action. And from time to time, I talk about individual lessons and how there are teaching points that are so helpful in teaching. And so today, what I wanted to do is talk a little bit about a lesson in executive functions. And this is really cutting edge, working with our children to be successful in life. Whew. But we talk about it from time to time about how it helps you to set goals and achieve them, and to be able to get through problem solving and be flexible and arrive at your goal and measure to see, are you getting there on a regular basis? Wonderful, wonderful things for all of us, by the way. Not just for our kids. I've changed a lot of the things that I'm doing in life as a result of this executive functions curriculum, because I was working out with my child and going, I need to work on this. So I encourage you to look at it. But people tend to think, then it's just for the older kids, or it's just for the kids that are more high functioning. And I always like to remind you that no, it starts very young so that you ramp up to those things. And one of the great lessons that's in there early on that parents love is called waiting. Because in the beginning, we teach our children to mand, right? Manding is when they request something. And it's so important that we teach that child to mand and that we reinforce that manding with whatever they requested the very second that they've manded. That's how we're going to get an increase in manding. And we know when we get an increase in manding, our child doesn't have to tantrum as much. Whoo, exciting, right? You're not even working on the tantrum, you're working on the manding, and the manding goes whoop like this, and the child goes, oh, I don't have to tantrum to get that cookie. I can just say cookie, or I can just point to the cookie. Well, I'm going to give up the tantrum thing. That takes a lot of energy to throw myself on the floor. Ah, angels sing, right? So manding is awesome. But then as you clip along, you get to a point where the child's manding, and in order to get them to do it, you gave that instant gratification, and now you get to a point where we gotta change that up a little bit, or we get kids who the second that they ask for it, they expect it, or now they're gonna tantrum, right? We don't want that. So once we get manding under control, and it's a prerequisite for waiting, we now want to start a waiting program. And you can see this on the A word, that this is exactly what happens with Jack Riley. He gets the manding under control, and then we add in waiting. So, and we want to start in very small ways with waiting, where, and we're going to be very succinct with it. We're going to set up and contrive a circumstances where the child wants something. We're going to have done a little bit of work ahead of time to figure out how long we're going to wait, but with a very small child, it may only be a count of 2, that they're going to mand for something, where they're going to request something, and we mentally count, we say wait, and we mentally count 1, 2, and then we give it. And we're going to change that up. But I wanted to go through, there's 10 teaching points in the skills program for teaching waiting, and they're awesome. I'm not going to get through all 10 of them, but I wanted to bring up a couple of them so that you can see how it helps you to build with generalization that we've been talking about today. And it helps to vary things so the child actually is learning waiting skills. So, okay, tip number 1, when teaching a child to wait, make sure you intersperse wait trials with trials in which the child is given immediate access to the requested item, person, or location or activity. You don't want to inadvertently discourage manding, right? We've just taught the child manding. If you ask for something, you get it, right? And so now the child is asking for something appropriately. And again, asking can be vocal, it can be pointing to something, it can be signing for something, all of those different things. Pointing at it, that's still manding. So now we're going to teach waiting, but we're not going to have them wait for it every time. We're going to have them wait one time, and the next time they ask for it, they're going to get it immediately. We're switching it up on them because we don't want them to stop manding and go, well, manding doesn't work. You just make me wait. So why should I mand? I'm going to go back to tantruming. We don't want that. So we're going to vary it up, right? Tip number 2. This is really important, so we're not wasting time. Assess the child's current and future natural environments to identify conditions in which the child is or will be expected to wait. For instance, the child might be expected to wait in line to use the slide at his or her preschool, or wait for a pizza to be heated in the microwave at home. Teach the wait response in conditions that are common or relevant to the child's natural environment at home, school, and in the community. So we're not going to contrive, we shouldn't only contrive circumstances in which we're, saying, wait, we want to take real circumstances. This is how we're going to get to generalization, because let's take things that are actually happening in the day, like mom being on the phone. Oh, right? How many times have we all wished I could just have a phone call? I swear there's like some magnetism that happens with children and dogs. They ignore you, and you pick up the phone to talk to someone you really need to speak to, and suddenly you are the most popular person. They are magnets, and the children and the dogs go, hi, I really need to talk to you right now, right in your face, right? Right? But it's a wonderful opportunity to work on wait, because we know that it happens. And we can work on this in a way. I encourage you not to do it when you're actually on the phone. Pick up the phone, see what happens. The child immediately comes to the magnet that is the phone and wants to talk to you, and you're pretending to talk. It's your good acting skills going, yeah, no, I know she said that. And you say to the child, wait, and you continue to talk 1 second and go, that was good waiting, and reinforce them, and then ask them, what do you want? And then they mand, and you give them the thing that they want. So you're praising, and you're reinforcing that they waited and you're giving them the thing that they wanted. That's a real life circumstance. Isn't that when we really want the waiting to work? Instead of contriving some ridiculous circumstance that has nothing to do with anything, teaching them to wait for the slide, teaching them to wait their turn for the swings, teaching them to wait to be able to get the cookie that they want, all of those different things. Gotta love it. Okay, here's another one. Tip number 3, initially establish a baseline of how long the child is able to wait for preferred items and activities. So you're going to take a little bit of data on it. You're trying to see, and you're just going to test it out. You say to the child, the child says, "Can I have a cookie?" And you say, "Wait," and just count how many seconds the child actually will wait. Because there are some children who can't even wait a second, right? And there are other children who are willing to wait patiently for 8 seconds, but at 9 seconds, it's, Katie, bar the door, right? So for that child that can wait 8 seconds, but 9 seconds is too much, we might start them out at waiting 7 seconds and reinforcing them. And then we'll bump them to 8 because we know that they can do 8. And then we'll go for 9. But we're certainly not going to start at 10. We're not trying to create tantrums, right? Usually there's an amount of time that a child can tolerate waiting in the beginning. And if we have to, what we can do is have it literally be a quarter of a second and then reinforce, and then make it a half a second and reinforce. I'm having to do this right now. I'm trying to teach my dog how to stay, and so I'm having to do it in increments, backing up from her. I can tell you it's painstaking, but it's working. Okay, tip number 4, it's likely that the child will be able to wait for different items and activities for different periods of time. So maybe the child can wait 8 seconds for the slide, and they can wait 20 seconds for the pizza, and they can wait 10 seconds when you're on the phone. So you really kind of have to gauge it. How preferred is the activity? And you can start to recognize in your child's body language when they're getting close. We don't want to get to the point where they're to distress, right? We want to get to the point where they get reinforced and go, everything's okay. So you got to get there before the distress. So start to notice about how long these things happen. And it says, well, I didn't read the rest of that other one. That's okay, because we get the general idea. But if, number 5, if the child has difficulty waiting, you can use a visual prompt. And they give you an example, a large yellow card with the word wait written on it to indicate to the child that he or she is expected to wait. The visual prompt should be provided to the child at the same time as the vocal stimulus wait. The visual prompt is then removed or taken from the child just prior to giving him or her access to the preferred item or the person or action or location or activity. Remember to fade this prompt out over time until the child is waiting in response to the vocal stimulus, saying waiting by itself. So, and for some kids, they're so visual. They're so visual, and we say wait, but they don't know what that is in the beginning. So we can make it a yellow card, or you can make it a blue dolphin. It doesn't matter what it is, but it's the thing that signals to the child you're waiting, and you hand it to them, right? And so they've got something to hold on to. I don't know why, but for some kids that makes a world of difference. And they know and that you're reaching for it, and that they know what they're waiting for, and that then they're going to get to do the thing that they want to do. So it can be really, really effective. And it can say wait on it, or it cannot. It doesn't ever hurt. You might say to yourself, my child can't read. That's okay. It doesn't matter. You're saying wait, handing them a card that says wait. Eventually, they're going to put that together along with a lot of other things. It can't hurt. It can't hurt at all. It's not that you're expecting them to read it. You're saying wait, and you're having them act out wait. Okay, number 6 is you may also choose to use a visual prompt to indicate how long the child must wait. For example, you could give the child a visual timer, an hourglass that shows the time shrinking. You can give them a little kitchen clock, and you're saying, okay, 10 seconds. And then this was really effective with my child at one point, that there were certain activities that he had such a hard time waiting that he needed to see something concrete. When am I going to get it? You're going to get it in 10 seconds. Now we even sometimes do that with, we haven't done it in a long time with homework, but we would set the timer and say, you need to do this much homework, and then we're going to take a break, and that's when you can play your video game. But this is how long you have to wait to be able to play the video game. If for kids who are visual, it can really, they go, okay, I see that the time is moving. Life is going on. It helps to release some of that anxiety and make them patient in terms of waiting. They have little watches, expensive little watches that you can get for kids that do that kind of thing, but you really don't need it. An egg timer from a game that you get at a garage sale, that all the pieces aren't there, but the egg timer is there, does the trick a lot of times. And you'll see the kids, they're like, the time is up, it's time to do the thing now. Very excited about it. You can use a visual, this is tip number 7, use a visual prompt. For example, a red X is placed on the object or onto a picture of the object, if necessary, to remind the child that the object activity is temporarily unavailable. I know you may not want to do all of these at the same time, but if the child is really perseverating on the object or the idea of the object and asking you over and over and over again, when can I play with it? When can I play with it? You can take a red X and put it on the thing and say, this is not available. And, so that when they say, when can I play with it? You can say, see, it's still not available. Look at your timer, to get their minds off of it. I don't know. There's something about it. Sometimes they go, oh, red X, it's not happening. I'm looking at the timer. Okay, I can focus on that. They need something to focus on sometimes. And it really signals, think about it this way. When you're driving in the car and you don't know where you're going, it can be so frustrating, right? If somebody else is holding the rule book and saying, well, you're going to turn, but I'm not going to tell you where. I don't know about you, but I get irritated. And that's what life in general is like for our kids. They feel like we're holding the rule book. They don't know what the rules are. When am I going to get it? And so they're going to tantrum as a result. Well, we can very visually set up a rule book for them saying, here's the egg timer. When the egg timer runs out, you're going to be able to get the toy, and when it is time, you rip that red X off the toy, and the child begins to understand, okay, these are the rules in which we're functioning. And I now know what the rules are, so I know how to behave. We do get a level of compliance that comes with that for some kids, not for all kids. Okay, here's another great tip, working towards generalization. As the child is able to wait for increasing periods of time, vary the length of time that he or she is required to wait so that he or she is able to wait for random lengths of time. So we're not always making it the same rigid amount of time, because our kids need to generalize these skills, and it's not going to be the same. The teacher is not going to always set it to 8 minutes before you can have your break, right? We don't want to set up kids who now have inflexibility issues, so we ourselves are going to vary it. That becomes part of the rule book for the kids, that it's not always going to be the same amount of time, so that they're going to learn, I just have to wait, and I am going to get the thing I want, and I'm not going to succumb to anything as a result of waiting. It's gonna be okay, but I'm waiting, and then I'm gonna get it. So we vary it. Okay, for number 9, for wait intervals longer than a few minutes, you may want to provide the child with something to keep him or her busy while they wait. For instance, you may give a child a book to look at, an MP3 player to listen to music, or a toy to play with. They suggest, and it goes on quite extensively, to make a wait box. That wait doesn't have to be torture, right? And we're not trying to teach our child that waiting is torture, and especially when we get into longer periods of time. That if we create a box that's wait things, here are the things that you can play with while you're waiting. Picture you on the phone, right? And you've said to the child, wait, and you've worked up so that now your child is waiting maybe 3 or 5 minutes. Picture being able to go to a place in your house and have this box of things that's there that are all preferred items for your child, and say, wait, Mommy's on the phone, here's your wait box, go and play, and I'll let you know when the waiting is over. How much better would your life be if your child happily trotted off to play with the thing and waited while you finished the phone call? We can get there. We can absolutely get there. Okay, and then tip number 10, I said we weren't going to get through all of them, but I'm hurrying through them. Once the child understands the instruction wait, make sure that you start to introduce other common forms of instructing the child to wait. So we're not only ever going to say wait, because your child's teacher might say, everybody hold on, right? Or in just a minute, we're going to do this. And so your child needs to start to understand that all of these things are going to amount to waiting. And what I love is in the skills program, they have exemplars already for you that give you suggestions, but that you can add as many ways as are appropriate for your child. We know in different places of the world, we have different phrases that we use, and you can customize all of that in the skills program. So you just have to love that. We can teach our children to wait. It's one of the earliest lessons in executive functions. It's absolutely life-changing when your child starts to get that. And for anybody who says, oh, well, when you're doing ABA, you're creating these instant gratification monsters. No, you just haven't moved on to the next lesson. And when we move on to waiting, everything gets that much easier. And when we have compliance with waiting, whoo, angels singing.